the 4th be with you. The host Candid Cubs speaks. The galaxy has heard a mysterious broadcast, a threat of revenge on the NL Central in the well-mannered voice of CRAIG Counsel. Jeff, Candid Cubs RAGAUSKIS analyzes the numbers of the day-to-day player intelligence, while Sean, HOTSTOVECUBBIES CHAPIN, the last hope of the Cub Podcasts, trains for the battle against the diabolical coming waiver or trade deadline. Meanwhile, May the 4th and Star Wars capture the attention of our heroes for one day, a threat to the Cubs' power over their fandom.
Hello there, Cub fans. Welcome to a very special episode of Bricks Behind the ID. I am your host, Jeff Obi-Wan Kenobi RAGAUSKIS, aka Candy Cubs. With me, as always, fresh from the Republic, Sean HOTSTOVECUBBIES Chapin. Sean, how are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. This is really hot in here. I will say these are not the BPTI hosts you are looking for. May the 4th be with you, Jeff.
Yeah, May the 4th. I think one thing that we bond over is obviously our beloved Chicago Cubs. This is a Cubs podcast for Cub fans by Cub fans, but we also have another huge fandom in common. It is Star Wars, and May the 4th is a big Star Wars holiday that is just celebrated with movies and sales and deals on Star Wars memorabilia, and there's also Revenge of the 5th, where a lot of people watch Revenge of the Sith, and it's just a lot of fun. It actually, to me, has meant a lot more in recent years than in years past, because during the pandemic, when things were kind of low and there weren't many things to do, Star Wars Day turned into a family holiday. If it's during the week,
awesome.
If it's, whenever the day landed, ever since the pandemic, we would do Star Wars activities. And the first year was just it was just the blue milk and pretzel rods that looked like lightsabers and tamer Star Wars cartoons. And it's, as the kids have gotten a little older, they have forayed into the saga, and it has gotten more fun. And by the time you guys are listening to this, it will be May the 4th, and I will be on my way to see the 25th anniversary release of Phantom Menace with my kids, which just makes me feel so old. I remember seeing this movie it was like my class, like my school kid party, and my parents took us to see Star Wars with a bunch of my friends from school, and my mom fell asleep during the pod racing scene, which, like, just as a kid was like, are you serious? This is the loudest and most insane scene in Star Wars.
Right.
But as an adult who has fallen asleep in a movie theater because it was quiet, cold, and the kids were entertained, I totally understand now.
For real.
Well, before I make a comment about you being a little short for a podcast host and a stormtrooper, Sean, what does Star Wars mean to you?
Oh my gosh. Star Wars is what brought me and my oldest together. He's actually going to see the Phantom Menace tomorrow with a group of friends. And that was just kind of crazy to think about, because I was just a little bit older than him when I went and saw Phantom Menace in the movie theater. So it was, it was a big, a big thing for Star Wars in general. My dad got the box set, and I remember watching all the classics back to back to back. And Star Wars is just a bonding thing for our family as well. We love it. Me and my oldest son and my friend, shout out to Josh. His brother actually let me borrow this helmet. I love this helmet, but it's getting really hot, so it's going to come off pretty soon. But we went, big fans of the Clone Wars. We went up to Minneapolis for Comic-Con up there and got Matt Launter's autograph, I think, right there on that Funko Pop. And it was really cool talking with him and just seeing a whole bunch of Star Wars nuts out there, as well as Marvel and stuff. But we're talking Star Wars today. We're talking baseball. We're talking Cubs. and just bringing all that love together. So I'm excited to share it with you, Jeff.
Yeah, absolutely. This is such a phrase I use all the time. Absolutely. But yeah, this is another corner of the Candid Cub Cave, and this is the Star Wars section of my display. There's also, not to be like harped on, but a Marvel section. But a majority of this basement is Cub stuff. But I do have, a huge love for Star Wars. And I think there's always, to me, the fandoms were born so similarly in its just familial ties. My dad introducing me to the VHS versions of the original saga as a Christmas gift one year, and just like
So cool.
watching those tapes until they probably were not great tapes anymore, and then just experiencing now two like saga releases in my younger impressionable years, the sequel trilogy and the prequel trilogy, both eliciting very different emotions. Obviously, we're not going to necessarily argue quality at the moment about these movies, but it's just such a different time. Both times when they came out were completely different cinematic experiences. Like the first groups were midnight shows, and that being like an actual thing that like at midnight was the only
Yeah.
time you were allowed, and the time zone like dictating if you could see it before other people, because out in the East Coast you could see it at 11 Central, and obviously the folks all the way out west had to wait till midnight by them, and having to get to the theater several hours early just to like have a chance to pick your seat and sit with your friends. Like that is something that I don't think people really think about or appreciate. And
No.
then like the scramble to get tickets, the sequel trilogies, like at I went at the midnight release, for the pageantry, but you have assigned seats, but it was still like getting those tickets online, like them being like the hottest selling tickets, movie tickets ever, until Taylor Swift recently shattered some of those Star Wars pre-sale records this past year, which like tells you how big Taylor Swift has gotten, and how big Star Wars is. But yeah, we're going to do some special things today just to kind of tie our Cubs to Star Wars characters and Star Wars things, and, share another side of ourselves and passion. And guess what? Sean's favorite thing is still here. We're doing a version of the Box Score Blitz,
Box
but
score blitz.
I am going to go
Box
through
score
the
blitz.
entire Star Wars storyline as quick as I can. I'm going to be upfront. I did not prepare. Usually I have notes for this, but it's been a crazy week and we really wanted to get this episode out. So
Wow.
as Sean takes off his helmet, we're
Look
gonna
how
find out.
freaking red my face is.
We're gonna find out who's sweating more, me during this box score blitz of the saga, or Sean trapped inside a clone helmet for like several minutes. So put time on the fake clock. Here we go. Episode 1. Da 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 da. Copyright issues. Episode 1. So episode 1 is actually not the first movie that was released. It was actually episode 4, which was A New Hope, which is really confusing because episode 1 is one of these movies that kind of establishes some of these characters, but also doesn't. We start with Obi-Wan Kenobi, a name that we know. He's young. He's wearing a ponytail. That's super weird. My daughter pointed this out to me the other day. I never really thought about it. Obi-Wan Kenobi is one of my favorite Star Wars characters. Anyway, him and Qui-Gon Jinn go to this planet Naboo to check on what they're calling a trade dispute. Yes, the early Star Wars movies are entirely about politics. That's not the Death Star. That's my mind getting blown. So anywho, they go down to Naboo and they find out that they're trying to blockade them and not get any of this stuff any trades off the planet, all this stuff. And they run into a Gungan. Misa meets Jar Jar Binks. Misa, the worst character to ever happen in cinema. And Misa! They have to go take Queen Amidala off of the planet so she can talk to the Senate and actually legitimate this blockade by the Trade Federation, which is a bunch of fish-looking guys and robots with guns. So they get them off the planet and they take this annoying character with them, Queen Amidala and a bunch of other Nabooians, on a very cool silver spaceship, and they get past the blockade. But oh no, trouble! They have their hyperdrive damage. So they have to land on a nearby planet called Tatooine. What? Tatooine? Yes, Tatooine. Tatooine, where there's so freaking much. It's one of 7 jillion sand-covered planets in Star Wars, which is absolutely ridiculous. Anywho, we go to Tatooine, and they need parts. But guess what? Republic credits are not taken by Tartarians. We meet Watto, who's one of the most obnoxious characters I ever met. My wife used to compare herself when she was pregnant to Watto, just on his little belly. So we used to call her a Watto bump when she was having her kids. Anywho, sorry, Rachel, I didn't mean to bring that up. We meet this boy, Jake Lloyd, one of the worst actors to ever exist. And he says, "Are you an angel?" "No, you're just terrible at acting." And he is Anakin Skywalker. Yes, you're gonna recognize the name Skywalker. Guess what? Spoiler alert, he's like the whole reason these movies exist. exist. He is a special little slave boy that falls in love with a girl that's way older than him, and it gets creepier and creepier. Don't worry, kids, there is so much creep coming. And he decides that he's going to help these people get their money by entering himself into a pod race. And Qui-Gon Jinn, who went on this as Obi-Wan, stayed behind. Went, hey, guess what? This kid's got a bunch of midichlorians. What are midichlorians? Literally not important after this movie. That's what they are. Apparently, they're supposed to measure how much like life force of the Force is in your bloodstream, which is absolutely freaking ridiculous. You could never watch this movie and be completely fine. Actually, no, there's some cool scenes in it. Anywho, this boy has like this Force sensitivity, and he was supposedly born, which like took me years to figure out because I don't know if I was obtuse, from the Force. His mom just got magically pregnant, so a little bit of a Christian algorithm there. So surprise, guess what? Western Eastern culture needing samurai swords, laser swords. We get to a pod racing scene. Yes, there's these gigantic spaceships that go really, really fast in the sand. There's this douchebag named Sebulba, and he's like, hey, kid, I'm going to beat you, but he says in a foreign language. And we go through 3 very long laps, and guess what? Anakin wins. And Watto, his slave owner, is like, no, you know what's going to happen. And Qui-Gon Jinn's like, yeah, I did. I know the Force. So they decide they're going to set Anakin free. It was part of the bet of the pod race. So Anakin gets set free. They go back to the spaceship, but guess what? There are bad guys. There's some weird looking dude in shadow that sends this guy named Darth Maul, one of the coolest Star Wars villains ever established, to go after the Queen and kill the Queen because they don't want the Queen to come and tell the Senate what's going on. Well, anywho, Qui-Gon runs into Darth Maul and he fights him and he goes, hold on, this guy's a Sith Lord. What's a Sith Lord? Well, we'll find about that later. So they get to the Senate and Queen Amidala tells the Senate what's going on with the blockade. Everybody said, no, there's no blockade. And they have a vote of no confidence in Chancellor Valoran, which just means like they're getting rid of the Chancellor. And they use their friend, this guy named Chancellor Palpatine, to go into power for them. Palpatine, that's a weird name. That's going to be important and familiar. Anywho, there's lots of name drops, blah, 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 blah. They decide, the Queen says, you know what, the Senate's way too slow. I need to go save my people. They're starving because of the blockade. They go back. Turns out the person we thought was Queen Amidala the whole freaking movie was not Queen Amidala. It was a woman standing next to her the whole time that was actually played by Natalie Portman. Her name is Padme. She's actually the Queen. She has a body double, which don't really understand the purpose of that for the plot. But anywho, they go to the Gungans, which is where Jar Jar is from. They're like, hey, we both live on this planet. We're part of this cycle. We have to save this planet. And the Guns are like, okie day. And then they fight these robots from space from the Trade Federation. They defeat them. They get a giant glowing orb. But wait, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon Jinn run into Darth Maul again. And guess what? Qui-Gon gets cut in half. He's dead. No, he actually gets a blade through him. But then Darth Maul gets cut in half by Obi-Wan. And Qui-Gon says, you must train this boy. And Obi-Wan's like, this seems like a really bad idea. So anywho, the movie ends with Anakin Skywalker, his future uncertain, as the Jedi Council said he's too old to be trained, but he might be the chosen one, which is the prophecy saying that he's the one who's going to bring down the Force. Second Star Wars movie, Attack of the Clones. This is possibly the worst Star Wars film. I will go down to my grave.
Disagree.
This is the worst Star Wars film.
Disagree.
This movie has such cringy, like absolutely uncomfortable, like masochistic moments that every time Anakin talks to Padme, I feel like I need to hire an attorney like watching this movie and be like, is he hurting you? So anywho, we run into Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker. Years later, Anakin's been trained. He's clearly a very powerful Jedi. The movie opens with another plot to kill Padme. Padme is just like constantly trying to get killed in this movie, and she just isn't getting killed. So they hire some bounty hunter to get her killed. Turns out that they think this bounty hunter's been hired by this guy named Count Dooku, who is the leader of what this movement they're calling the Separatists, who are people who are getting away from the Republic, and they are going to fight the Republic with this army they're using. They're building a droid army, and there's this discussion of whether or not the Republic needs an army to fight the Separatists. So there's this big vote, and everybody's like, oh no, if we need an army, and they're like, we do need an army, and like Emperor Palpatine, whoops, spoiler alert, Chancellor Palpatine's like, oh, I don't know what to do. So they send Obi-Wan Kenobi to this planet called Kamino, where there's these gigantic white-looking things that speak really weird. They're like, hey, guess what? We already made this army, and he was going to Kamino to chase after this bounty hunter named Jango Fett. Yes, Jango Fett, because Boba Fett, another thing we'll learn later. Jango Fett has been using himself as the clone person to make this clone army. So they go in this, they have this huge montage, and they see Sean's helmet like 40 billion times, and the same actor, one of the Baldwins, and there's like just Baldwins running over the rest of this movie. So Obi-Wan Kenobi goes to tell everyone, hey, guess what? There's already this army, Master Sifo-Dyas, which is a name that's dropped and never important again. Master Sifo-Dyas orders the clone army. I'm like, oh, that's weird. We never ordered a clone army. So the Jedi ordered this clone army. So everything seems to be coming up with the Jedi. Well, guess what? Anakin in all this has been hired to protect Padme. He goes to Naboo with Padme. They have like just a lot of really uncomfortable looking at each other. Padme's like, I think I love you. And then Anakin's like, I'm like 9 years younger than you, and it's less creepy now because I'm no longer a child. But however, I'm going to say really creepy things to you. And Jedi aren't supposed to love anyone because they're not supposed to have attachment because it's a weird religion where like I get all these superpowers, but I'm not allowed to like anybody. So they like have this moment, and all of a sudden he's like, I had this dream my mom said. So they go back to Tatooine because God forbid we don't go back to Tatooine. So we go to Tatooine, and he finds out his mom's dead, and then we find out that Anakin's got some anger issues. He kills like a bunch of people, just a bunch of sand people. Yes, we can argue whether or not they're people in the Star Wars universe, but they are people, and he kills the women and the children, and he starts crying. It's really upsetting. He finds out Obi-Wan has been captured when he went to go look for Jango Fett, so he goes to try to save Obi-Wan, but Obi-Wan and Anakin and Padme get captured trying to rescue Obi-Wan, so they get sentenced to death, and it turns out it's Count Dooku that's on this planet, and they're building all these robots, and they're going to have this big army, but guess what? They approve the clone army. Clone army comes and saves Anakin and Obi-Wan and Padme. They run into Count Dooku later in this, trying to stop him before he goes out and escapes the planet. This planet is called Geonosis, I didn't mention that. And in that fight, Anakin gets his hand cut off. Yes, he gets his hand cut off just like his son, and there's a lot of hurt people, a lot of hurt feelings. Count Dooku leaves, and he mysteriously leaves on this giant kite ship, and he lands his kite in like a fiery field on the planet where the Senate is, and he tells the Shadowy figure, everything's going as you said, planet, and he hands over what looks like Death Star plans to this guy, and he's like, yes, good, and the movie ends with that everybody looking at this army, and it's like, all right, here comes the Clone Wars. Guess what? There's a whole show about the Clone Wars, but like when we get to the next movie, we're like way deep in the Clone Wars, so there's no reason to like talk about the Clone Wars. Watch that show. We're not talking about the show. So, oh man, Revenge of the Sith. This was actually one of my favorite Star Wars movies because there's just like so many like nerdy callback moments. So we start the movie with Anakin and Obi-Wan going to save the Chancellor. The Chancellor's been captured by Count Dooku. They go into the ship. They've been captured by this guy named General Grievous, who's this weird-looking, multi-armed robot. Yeah, exactly. actually who sounds like he's got COVID from 2020, and he walks around and he's got a bunch of lightsabers like in his cape, which like just no one explains. He's got this cool backstory. Doesn't matter. They're on the ship. They find Count Dooku. Anakin executes Count Dooku in front of Chancellor Palpatine. Palpatine's like, yeah, it's so weird. He's trying to think maybe this Palpatine thing's like kind of creepy. He's got like this obsession with Anakin. So, you know, they crash land the ship. Yeah, that's the only way they crash land the ship. And they go, and the Jedi Council's like, we need Anakin to look after his friend Palpatine. And Palpatine tells Anakin this crazy story about, have you ever heard the story of Darth Plagueis? And they tells him about like how he can stop people from dying. And Anakin's big issue is like, oh my god, Padme and I, we had the secret marriage, and Padme and I are gonna have this baby. I just found her she's pregnant, and I keep having dreams she's gonna die, and there's something I need to do. And Palpatine's like, I'm actually the Sith Lord, and I can save your babies. And Anakin is just absolutely overtaken with concern for Padme. So he turns to the dark side. They find out, he goes and tells the Jedi Council that, hey, guess what, this guy's like super bad. And he, for some reason, goes and sits and broods in a room by himself for like a half hour while the Jedi go to like kill this dude, even though he's the most powerful Jedi, and he should probably go like help arrest him. He gets there, and Mace Windu, one of the coolest Jedis ever, is like standing there about to kill Palpatine, and he's like, no, don't stop him, and he stops him, and he ends up hurting Windu. And then Palpatine, who's been like crushed by his own Force lightning, which I don't know if this is like part of his plot, like his face gets all weird looking, so he looks like Emperor Palpatine from the older Star Wars movies, which are technically the next Star Wars movies, which are now newer, I don't even know. But at this point, Anakin is no longer Anakin Skywalker. He becomes the apprentice of Emperor Palpatine, who is now known as Darth Vader. They're Sith. There are only two. There's only two Sith, and they only deal in absolutes, which is absolutely absolutely taking longer than I thought it would be. So anyway, Obi-Wan's like, oh, what happened? And Emperor Palpatine's like, execute Order 66. And the Order 66 is like, we have to kill all the Jedi. They're not Anakin. So Anakin goes and kills like a bunch of children. Yeah, super Jedi. He kills just a bunch of children in the Jedi Temple, and we see this montage of this now Republic army killing Jedis that have been assisting them through the whole war. And the only ones that are left are Yoda, Obi-Wan, and then technically Anakin, who's not a Jedi anymore. And he goes and he tells Padme, he's like, I brought peace to my new empire. And she's all worried about him. And like, Obi-Wan comes and he looks back. He's like, what happened to Anakin? He's like, did he get killed in the thing? And Yoda's like, no, don't look at the tapes. Only pain it will bring. And he watches this tape. And he watches Anakin kill a bunch of children. He's like super upset. And Anakin's like, that's my Padawan. He's also my best friend. I don't know what to do. And maybe I love him. Well, maybe there's a love triangle here thing. Anywho, Obi-Wan decides that he's gonna go tell Padme that he thinks Anakin's in trouble, and then he secretly follows Padme to figure out where Anakin is, where he's sitting and brooding on Mustafar, where he's told to like go murder the entire Trade Federation, because Palpatine's been playing both sides, both teams, and moving all the chess pieces and making sure like he's the only one left and he's in power. So he gets there, and like Padme gets there, and she tells Anakin like, run away with me, let's just get away from these politics. And Anakin's like drunk with power, and he sees Obi-Wan, and he blames Padme for bringing Obi-Wan, so he chokes Padme because he's really mad at her, and she ends up getting really, really hurt, and she dies of a broken heart, because that makes sense, but ends up having these babies that are named Luke and Leia, which we're getting there. And Obi-Wan and Anakin get in this big fight, and there's lava fighting. He's like, it's over, I have the high ground, and Anakin's, you underestimate my power. And the next thing he's in half, and he's like a skeleton, like all like, and he's like, he looks really hard, and it's a very dramatic moment. So Emperor Palpatine's like, we gotta get in the ship and go save my apprentice. And he like takes this half a man that has one hand and half a torso, puts him in this giant spacesuit, and now he's like the most dangerous guy in the entire universe, while also being a giant, like, bright asthmatic. So we end the movie with Emperor Palpatine and Darth Vader sitting there looking at the Death Star plans, and Obi-Wan is separating Luke and Leia because Emperor Palpatine told Anakin, Darth Vader, that his wife is dead and his children were dead, because that's what he thought, but his children were living on, and they're only living descendants of Anakin Skywalker. I'm gonna take a deep breath. And we're back to the original trilogy, which is the original movies that came out first. Yeah, that's making a little bit sense, sort of now. It's called A New Hope. It's the first Star Wars movie. We meet Luke Skywalker, who's living on, guess what, Tatooine. Yes, Tatooine. We're there all the time. And he is starting to think about joining the Rebellion. The Rebellion is this group of soldiers that are trying to fight against the Empire. The Empire is what Darth Vader is running, and Emperor Palpatine as they're just like causing havoc and all this mad murder and takeover of all the planet and their infrastructure all over the galaxy. He's like, I want to join the Rebellion. And he's like, no, you can't join the Rebellion. And then his uncle and his Aunt Prue, who are taking care of him, they're the only living relatives of anyone close to his family. It was whose mom had married, Anakin Skywalker's mom had married into this family, so they gave Luke to this family. Anyway, who cares? So Luke, these two droids and a ship at the beginning of the film are with a woman named Princess Leia. Who Princess Leia is actually Leia, as in Lord Vader's daughter, and they are taking the Death Star plans, which are supposed to help destroy the Death Star, and they're trying to take them to someone named Ben Kenobi, which is Obi-Wan Kenobi. For some reason, they're calling him Ben. I have no idea why they're calling him Ben. So, anywho, they're trying to get these plans in, and they get attacked by Lord Vader's ship. They're finally found, and they're boarded, and they shoot these two droids, C-3PO and R2-D2, down to Tatooine, and they're like, guess what? They're gonna hide the plans. Darth Vader finds out they're hiding the plans there. These two droids get sold by Jawas. They're like scavenger dudes. To Luke Skywalker, he goes in there, he tries cleaning a droid, he finds a message from Princess Leia, goes, help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope. So he's like, I wonder if he's talking about, Ben Kenobi, because, there's just so many Kenobis that he just could only think of one Kenobi.
It's like Smith in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, Kenobi, Smith, they're pretty interchangeable. So Obi-Wan Kenobi at this point, he is living on Tatooine as Ben Kenobi, and he's very, very sad because, well, there's a whole show about that. You can watch that, who cares? So, anywho, Luke Skywalker's droid, R2-D2, runs off on him because he's gonna go look for Ben Kenobi on his own. Luke Skywalker goes chasing after the droid. They find the droid, and there's a bunch of, guess what, sand people. Yeah, Anakin, you thought he murdered all of them? He didn't. There's still sand people there. Sand people knock him unconscious. This old monster cries in like this robe, and he opens his hood, and he goes like this, hello there, which is a line that we see in the prequels of Star Wars. It's really cool. It's one of those connecting moments, and it's Alec Guinness, and he is the actor that's playing Ben Kenobi in this. Turns out Ben Kenobi is actually a Jedi. His name is actually Obi-Wan Kenobi. He recognizes the individual from this tape, and he's gonna go help them move the Death Star plans. They go to Mos Eisley, the most dangerous place to scum and villainy in the galaxy, to try to find a pilot to get them to take these plans to someone in the rebellion. They meet a character named Han Solo, who shot first. He shot this guy in the park, and they end up taking his ship, which is the coolest ship in the world. It's the Millennium Falcon. There's a whole ship about the Millennium Falcon that comes around. It's called Solo. You can watch that if you want. Otherwise, you can watch these movies where it's Harrison Ford, and he's way better as Han Solo than the guy that got Alan Aldrich, who was kind of weird as Han Solo, but I don't know why that movie was made. Besides, Donald Glover was a really, really good Lando Calrissian. But anywho, they take the Millennium Falcon, they get off at Tatooine, the Empire's like hot in their tails, and they're going, oh, let's take these things to the rum place in Alderaan, and they get to Alderaan. Turns out the Death Star, who has Princess Leia, turns out Alderaan is Princess Leia's home. They blow up Alderaan. Yes, they blow up it. Why do they blow up planets? So they get to Alderaan, it's just bits, just space rocks. They don't know what's going on. They find this planet that they think is a small moon. That's not a small moon. It's a space station. And they're like, no, it's not a space station. They actually get pulled in by the space station structure beam. They end up on the Death Star, and they're like, hold on, that Princess Leia's here. Let's rescue her. So Han, Chewie is Han's best friend. I skip Chewie. They go onto the ship and they rescue Princess Leia. They leave Princess Leia. They're like, we gotta get on offensive. We gotta destroy this Death Star with these Death Star plans. And while they're escaping the Death Star, Obi-Wan Kenobi faces his old apprentice Darth Vader, aka Anakin Skywalker. Anakin Skywalker / Darth Vader strikes him down, or did he? Just disappears. There's nothing. There's no body. There's no chopping. What happened? We don't even know. So they escape. Chewie, Leia, Han, Luke, to Yavin 4. This is where they mount their offensive. They're gonna take down the Death Star because they have these plans, but also the Death Star's coming to blow up their planet, so they only have a certain amount of time. They have to hit this chute that's like this big with a torpedo. So they send all these people, and there's a lot of like double entendre things they say. It's like, he came in from behind, almost there, almost there, and they keep shooting torpedoes at this little tiny hole, and it's just not getting in the hole. And then Luke Skywalker's like, I don't need to use this computer because I have this old man in his hand. His name's Obi-Wan Kenobi. He says, use the Force, and he shoots this thing, goes into the hole while he's being chased by his father, who doesn't know he's his father, Darth Vader. He blows up the Death Star. It blows away Han Solo, who we thought was leaving because he only wanted to do things for money, comes back, and he's like, hey, I'm gonna help you. He shoots Darth Vader and goes spinning around. He throws up in a spaceship for like, I guess, like several years while we wait for the next movie. And everybody's giving medals besides Chewie. You know, Chewie was the co-pilot of Millennium Falcon, and Princess Leia greets him at the end of the movie, and she's like, I knew you weren't in it for just the money, and they all laugh and hold hands, and that's the end of the movie. Empire Strikes Back, considered one of the best Star Wars movies ever made. Empire Strikes Back is where we find Darth Vader looking for Luke Skywalker, because he's found out Luke Skywalker is going to be trained to be as a Jedi. It starts in a snow planet, it's called Hoth. The whole thing with there is they found the wrong place, they gotta destroy this wrong place because he's still looking for Luke Skywalker. Luke Skywalker has this vision while he almost freezes to death on Hoth while looking for this spaceship or these little probe droids that are looking for a rebel base. He destroys one, gets stuck in the snow, he sees his little mentor Ben Kenobi, and he goes, go to the Dagobah system, meet someone named Yoda. And Yoda is someone from the prequel movies that you've seen at this point, but Yoda is a Jedi Master. So he's gonna go get trained to be a Jedi by Yoda. So they have this big battle. It's really cool. There's these walker things, these little things, snow speeder speeds. It's always like these big machines versus these time machines, and the time machines always win because it's fun. So anywho, they leave Hoth. They're like, yeah, we're gonna go this way. And Han and Princess Leia and Chewie and C-3PO, they all go one way, the Millennium Falcon. And Luke is gonna go to Dagobah and meet this Yoda guy. So Han and them are being chased by the Empire because like, we're gonna get these people. I want Princess Leia. I want Han. So Darth Vader's like, I'm gonna hire all these bounty hunters. I'm gonna get these guys, and I'm gonna use them as bait to trap and get Luke Skywalker to come back and save his friends. And that actually works, like, which is great. You know, people usually love their friends, but like this guy really loves his friends, and he finds his friends in trouble. And he immediately stops training to be a Jedi. But anyway, Luke goes to Dagobah, goes and learns that Darth Vader is not just this bad person. Darth Vader is this really big Jedi that killed his father. But even later in the movie, we find something different. It's actually his father, which, like, spoiler alert, but we're gonna get there in a second. So he meets with Yoda, and he goes down this like dark side cave. He's like, oh god, this is scary. And like I was fighting Darth Vader, and I saw myself in there because they're afraid that Luke's gonna turn to the dark side. He finds out his friends are in trouble. Decides to go to save his friends. His friends are actually this place called Cloud City. It's owned by a friend of Han Solo's. His name is Lando Calrissian. They used to be old friends. They used to be the customer together in Millennium Falcon. Millennium Falcon used to be on the Calrissian ship. So Lando's like kind of pissed off about that probably. So he actually ends up selling his friends to the bounty hunter because he wants to make money because he's a douchebag. And then the bounty hunter obviously is working for the Empire. So Darth Vader ends up at Cloud City. He's now got the princess. He's got Chewbacca, and he's got Han. And Han is actually being frozen in carbonite because he owes a bunch of money to a gangster named Jabba the Hutt. Jabba the Hutt wants him as a prize, and he wants him alive. And they want to use this carbonite thing to see if they can trap Luke Skywalker using carbonite. So they need to test it on someone before they test it on Luke Skywalker because they want to catch Luke Skywalker and bring him to the Emperor. Anyway, they freeze Han and carbonate. Everyone's really sad, and Lando's like, oh shit, this deal's getting worse all the time. I said, shit, this is the first time I've sworn in this podcast.
It's late.
And then Luke Skywalker fights Darth Vader in this thing, and like he gets really hurt, and he's like hanging on this weather vane, and he's like, guess what? I am your father. And he's like, no, it's impossible. And like he falls down this giant tube, which I used to pretend when I was in slides until I was like 15 that was a tube from Empire Strikes Back. And it's like, no, Darth Vader's my father. And anywho, like he finds he's really upset about this, so he gets saved by Leia, who has a sense that there's something wrong with Luke. So is Leia Force sensitive? Who knows? So Lando, Leia, Chewie, C-3PO get Luke from this weather vane in Cloud City, and they escape. They finally fix the hyperdrive in the Millennium Falcon. There's a reason they cannot run the Empire. Movie ends with him getting a new hand because he got his hand chopped off by his father. They're really into losing hands in Skywalker. It's a big thing. It's big. Everybody has like one hand, which really sucks. Anywho, they're like, oh no, what are we gonna do? We gotta fight the big evil thing. It's now it's my father. Return of the Jedi. The start of the movie is like, we gotta go get Han. We can't have him leave him in carbonite. Princess Leia dresses as this weird bounty hunter. She gets him there. She releases him from carbonite. He's actually still alive. He doesn't have all his vision and stuff. Side. Luke had this big plan where he sent like all his friends in there as like different people to infiltrate Jabba the Hutt's palace where Luke Skywalker's at, or where Han Solo is at. So ultimately, at the end of this, they're like, we need to kill Jabba the Hutt. We need to get Han out of here, which is what happens. There's a big fight. Boba Fett, who's like one of the lamest characters in Star Wars in hindsight because he only has like 7 minutes of screen time. And one of it's like him jumping over a platform, and Lando Calrissian goes, Boba Fett! And then he falls into the Sarlacc pit, which he eventually erupts his hand and extends toward the 2 sons of Tatooine, just like that novel said in Parks and Rec. But that's where the Book of Boba Fett's a completely different show. Anywho, they escape Tatooine, yes, Tatooine again, and Luke goes back to talk to Yoda because he's like, hey Yoda, I'm gonna finish my training after I go see my friends. But it's been years since this happened, and now he's built like a different color lightsaber because apparently they had new technology that can make lightsaber different colors, so that's why they use it in Return of the Jedi instead of keeping the blue lightsaber because they only use blue and red in post-production to make lightsaber colors. Yes, that's something very interesting about Star Wars lightsabers, which I bet you didn't really give a crap about. But ultimately, he goes back to Yoda, and Yoda dies, and he's like, there's another Skywalker, and he realizes, hey, Princess Leia, who he kisses in the first movie and has a romantic moment in the second movie, is his sister. Oh, super gross!
hold on, pause. People complain about the writing of the sequel trilogy. They do not realize or do not remember that all 3 of these Star Wars movies were written by separate writers, and that there was no cohesive plan going into the final movie. They just were winging it the whole time, which is exactly how the new movies were made. So if you want to be mad about process, be mad at George Lucas as well, because he did the same damn thing unpaused. So Luke has to go fight his father. They have this big offensive. Guess what? They didn't have an idea for another thing. So they're building another Death Star, and it's literally called Death Star 2. And they're going to have
originality
built so they can go around destroying planets again. But while it's being built, they have this giant shield generator on this small forest planet. It's got these cute little teddy bears called Ewoks, and they're using the shield generator to protect it. The Death Star while it's being built, it's not yet finished. The Emperor decides he's going to oversee the finishing plans of the Death Star 2 because he has this vision, because he's like Darth Plagueis, so he's all these super weird force tricks, and he's like, I know Luke Skywalker is going to try to come confront his father, which is Anakin Skywalker, who's Darth Vader, and Darth Vader ends up going to Endor. Luke turns himself in on Endor. The rebels make friends with the Ewoks, and they're like, hey, we're going to take out the shield generator together, and it turns out that it's a trap from the Emperor, but then like the Ewoks are like the wild card. The Ewoks come in here with like rocks and bows and arrows and logs and like take out these like high industrial spaceships, and then like they take out the shield generator while Luke is the Emperor's trying to teach Luke to be his new apprentice. He wants his apprentice to kill his father, just like they had him kill Dooku, because there only can be 2 Siths, and they start fighting each other, and Luke goes, no, never, and he throws the I'll never kill my father, and the Emperor starts shocking Luke Skywalker, and he's like, then you will die, and like he's shaking, he's like, father, no, help me, and in the new cut of the movie, like, Lord Vader goes, no, and he like throws the Emperor over the edge, where like in the original movie, he just picks him up and throws him, and it's like more powerful. This is like just a post-edit thing. There's release the original versions of the prequel films, like not the ones with the weird CGI crap in it. If you're a Star Wars fan, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So, Anakin Skywalker is finally redeemed. Luke Skywalker's father is now dead, and he's actually happy that his father dies as Anakin Skywalker, not as Darth Vader. He gives him a perfect burial. They all celebrate on this planet of Endor with all the dancing teddy bears, and teddy bears are like, num, 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 and like, which is like the best song ever, but they also replace that in the original movies, so it pisses me off. So, anywho, that's the end for Luke Skywalker, we think. So years and years later, Disney decides that they need to buy this franchise and make more money, so they make the sequel trilogies, which is what happens after Return of the Jedi. And what ends up happening is actually kind of the same thing that happened before all these movies. We meet this girl who's on a barren desert planet that is not Tatooine, but looks a lot like Tatooine. It's called Jakku, which is apparently where like the last stand battle between the Emperor and the Rebels, when the Empire finally went down, happened. And there's just like all these like Emperor wreckage. There's like Star Destroyers everywhere, and they have to like junk these ships to get food, and she doesn't have much food, and she's like, oh man, like this is terrible. My family left me here. Oh, my family's like, it's a big secret. And we're all like, who is this? Who's this Rey person? Like, we really need to know about this person. What's her family? Because family's everything in Star Wars, and family means everything in Star Wars. So she must be someone really important. Spoiler alert. We'll find out later. So anywho, this movie starts with Poe Dameron, who's a fighter pilot for the Rebellion, which is actually now called the Resistance, which is, still RE, lazy writing, Rebellion, Resistance, same thing, but it's the same cause. We're still doing the same thing. We're still fighting. And now it's not the Emperor, it's the First Order. They're the first group that's come together after the Emperor has been deceased to try to reign evil on the Emperor, because like these people can't be left alone. They have to always be tortured by these gigantic triangular spaceships. So Poe Dameron's trying to get the Star Map. They're trying to find Luke Skywalker. Luke Skywalker has disappeared, and he's disappeared because he was trying to raise a new class of Jedi, but something went terribly wrong. And the thing that went terribly wrong is that Han Solo and Princess Leia's son, who was known as Ben Solo, turned to the dark side by someone named Snoke, and he became someone known as Kylo Ren, where he wears this mask, much very similar to Darth Vader, and he is a Darth Vader disciple, and he tells people, I'm going to finish what you started. And he wants to become a Sith, but he doesn't really want to be a Sith, but he kind of wants to be a Sith, but we don't really know. He's like conflicted, and he's got all this family legacy. He's like, I'm a Skywalker, but I'm not a Skywalker, but I want to be bad, but I want to be good, and he doesn't know what to do. So he's very conflicted, but he's being manipulated by this Dark Force named Snoke. We don't know anything about Snoke, but we just know he leads the First Order. So Snoke finds out that there's this map for Skywalker. They want to kill Skywalker, so there's no chance for Jedi to be again. So he sends Kylo Ren after this map. The map actually goes around the droid. It's not familiar with the droid. His name BB-8. He looks like a soccer ball. BB-8's actually cool. I really like BB-8. I think it's really good design, but he does look like a soccer ball, which is the most popular sport in the world. So that's exactly why it's designed that way. BB-8 finds this girl Rey that I talked about earlier, and he's like, hey, like we need to find my thing. And in the middle of this, Poe Dameron actually gets saved on the ship he gets captured on while they were trying to find this map by a stormtrooper that no longer must be a stormtrooper. His name is FN2187, and they start calling him Finn. And Finn saves Poe Dameron because Finn doesn't know how to fly a ship, and Poe Dameron's a pilot. So they escape. They crash on Jakku, same planet as earlier. Finn can't find Poe Dameron, which like originally apparently they were gonna kill him, but they ended up liking Oscar Isaacs, who plays Poe Dameron a lot, so they bring him back later in the movie. Yes, a little bit of a pothole, but like he is kind of cool in the movie, and they want to have this Han Solo Ruggish guy, and like now they need the Han Solo Ruggish guy because, well, something happens to Han Solo in this movie, which we're gonna get to. So Finn goes looking for this robot that he's been told by Finn has by Poe Dameron that has the map of Skywalker. He runs into Rey. They get chased by the Empire or First Order. First Order's chasing after him. They're like, oh god, what are we gonna do? And he's like, we need to take this piece of junk ship out of here. The piece of junk ends up being the Millennium Falcon, which is from all the Star Wars movies, and they're driving around. There's this huge fight scene. It's really cool, and they end up in space. And then like the ship starts breaking down, and Rey's like this natural pilot, and you're like, wow, this is really cool. And she's like, well, but I gotta get back to Jakku. She's like, back to Jakku? Why does everyone want to go back to Jakku? But she's waiting for family because she thinks her family's gonna come back and save her, because that's why she's still on Jakku. She's been counting on the inside of her ship with all these little shippers. So my family's coming back out with my family. So anywho, their ship gets taken by guess who? Han Solo, who's the original owner of the Millennium Falcon. He goes in there, he's like, where'd you get this? And it's like, it's been on Jakku. And he's like, it's been on Jakku to the Parsec thing, everyone knows the Parsec thing. So anywho, they get caught by two gangs that are saying, hey, like Han Solo swindled everyone in the galaxy, because it turns out he's been hurting because his son, Kylo Ren, aka Ben Solo, has been tormenting the galaxy, and he feels at fault, and Luke feels at fault. That's why Luke went into hiding, and he's kind of confused because people are looking for Luke, but they don't really knows where Luke is, and he hasn't been talking to his wife, who's Princess Leia, who's also another Skywalker. So like these games are like, you've cheated us. It's like blah blah blah, and like action ensues. There's these things called reptars. They end up going to another planet where another alien tells them they need to go somewhere else. This alien says this line that I think is really, really cool. You see the same eyes in people even in different events, which is Maskanada, which is played by Lupita Nyong'o, which is a really cool actress to get for that part, which was a bigger part. But anywho, it just makes me feel like that like all these symmetries are because there's no balance in the Force, and that's why these events keep happening, is because since there is no symmetry in the Force, the same thing can happen again, even with different people's eyes or different perspectives. So I thought that's really cool in the movie. Anywho, Kylo Ren comes this year and he's like, I'm gonna pull everything up. I'm going to take this girl, Rey, who seems to like be something special and has seen the Math of Skywalker, and I'm gonna take her on my ship. And she starts like having all these immediate Force powers. She has Force vision on Maz Kanata's castle, which she's on the planet earlier. And Rey's like, oh man, like I think I can do the Force now. And she ends up escaping the ship where she gets captured by Kylo Ren, and she turns a Jedi mind trick on him, and he gets really, really scared. And he tells Snoke, she's stronger in the Force than you know, in that very Adam Driver-ish way. Adam Driver's a very good actor, and he's just way too good for these films. But he's my favorite part of the film. He's one of my favorite Star Wars characters of all time. Anyway, he's like, she knows the Force, and they tell him, well, you know, you're a fractured soul, you need to do this. So Han Solo and them come to rescue Rey, who's on this thing called Starkiller Base, yes, which is pretty much like a Death Star, except instead of a tiny little space station, it's actually a planet in which they use the lasers to destroy their planet. So like, and they make a point in the movie, which is one of my favorite parts of the movie. It's like, it's not the Death Star, this is the Death Star, this is the Starkiller Base, and it's like, wow, look at the magnitude change in the exact same concept. So they're like, we need to destroy this thing because it just wiped out the Senate, because they tested the weapon by blowing up the New Republic that's supposed to bring order to the galaxy. They destroyed all the planets that are part of the New Republic in one fell shot. This powerful laser that's powered by this thing called hyper crystal, which is actually powered its lightsaber as well. So Han Solo says, hey, I can use light speed to get through their shields. We land on the planet, we save Rey, we start some explosives, and we get their shields down, and you can bring some people, you can bring small ships, and we can take down this planet. That's basically what happens when he runs into his son. And Princess Leia tells him, you see our son, tell him we love him. So he goes up to his son and he says, I have this thing I have to do, and I don't have the strength to do it. And Han Solo's like, I can help you. And then Kylo Ren stabs him right in the gut, and Harrison Ford finally gets his wish and gets killed in the Star Wars movie, so no one has to ask him to be Han Solo ever again, which is exactly what he's wanted since 1985. So anyway, Han Solo dies. Chewie and Rey, who has found Han Solo to be a father figure in about 73 minutes in this film, she's like, no, I can't do this. And Kylo Ren starts chasing after him. She's like, no, I gotta figure out what's going on with this girl. And he catches up to him, and Rey gets knocked unconscious. Finn is with her at this time. Finn picks up the lightsaber, starts fighting Kylo Ren. Kylo Ren kicks his butt because all the trailer shows is Finn with the lightsaber. And guess what? Rey picks up this lightsaber and like shows Kylo Ren that she's kind of the boss. The planet splits apart, so they're not allowed to finish their fight. Kylo Ren then has to go back to Snoke and figure out what to do. He's gonna go to Snoke to finish his training. Rey gets back on the ship. She saves Finn, who's been mortally hurt. They go back to this planet. They blow up Starkiller Base, and everything seems fine for now. They find them at Luke Skywalker. She goes Luke Skywalker. She holds out the lightsaber. He's like, would you like your lightsaber back? And it goes credits. What the hell? We waited so long for Star Wars movies. That's how the Star Wars movie ends. Guess what? There's another Star Wars movie called Last Jedi. Last Jedi starts literally the moment that movie ends. She hands the lightsaber over to Luke Skywalker because she wants Luke Skywalker to teach her Jedi. He takes lightsaber to Rose, which people think is an abandonment of Luke Skywalker's character, which is actually him acting in character more than he's ever acted in character, because Luke Skywalker has been someone who has seen so much hardship that he's decided to turn himself off from the Force, and he also has seen so many things in his life that he thinks it's only fair that the Jedi should die, because they have all these principles of hubris. They decide how things should go, and that they think they're only the correct way to do things, but that's not necessarily true. So he brings this humanization to the Jedi story, and he tells a story about how he trained Ben, and Ben, he saw some darkness in him, and he decided he needed to kill his nephew, and then he felt that in an immediate moment that he made a mistake, that he couldn't have to kill his nephew, and Kylo Ren was born in that day, and Snoke had already manipulated him, and there's just 2 or 3 different versions of the story throughout the movie, and Kylo Ren is telling Rey one thing, and Luke is telling Rey another thing, and we finally get the truth the 3rd time through, which is a very classic storytelling trope that's from a lot of classic samurai movies. And we find out that Rey wants to go fight Kylo Ren because she wants to change him to be a good person. She wants him to be Ben Solo again, and that's one part of the movie. The other part of this movie is this weird thing where like the Resistance being chased by the First Order, and the Resistance is slowly learning that they don't have the correct leadership, they don't have all the things they need to be successful this time around, and the First Order is getting on them. They're able to track these ships through light speed, they're running out of fuel, they're being chased by the First Order, and they're trying to figure out all these other things. Poe Dameron, Finn, and a new character named Rose are trying to figure out these things as Princess Leia gets knocked unconscious in one of the space battles. She uses her Mary Poppins magic to get back on the ship as she gets blown off the ship. It's actually her using the Force. It's the first time we've seen Princess Leia use the Force, which you find out that she actually was trying to use the Force later in a different movie, the last movie of the saga. Anywho, that pretty much gets you this thing about Canto Bites, like a casino. It's kind of weird, like you go to this casino, like, we have to get this master code breaker so that you can break in the ship and break the ship so they can't track through light speed, and this guy's like really weird, and then they like find out that, oh, everyone who makes money in the galaxy is making ships for both sides. It's like, yeah, it's like the military in real life. How that's a really scary elder, like just an elder right there. So they find out that the rich people are making ships for both sides. Ultimately, what ends up happening is this episode is getting way too long. Rey fights Kylo Ren. Kylo Ren actually kills Snoke, and he decides that he wants to be the big baddie because now that Snoke's gone, he's the big baddie. He's like, Rey, join me. Like, you're no one. We were trying to figure out who Rey is, and he's like, your family were drinkers, and they're in shell grades and plan, which is at this point I think was a manipulative lie, and people are taking it as the gospel truth, so they're mad because like we spent an entire year trying to figure out what Rey was, and Rey actually ended up being nothing. So she is distraught. She leaves Kylo Ren because she's Kylo Ren to be evil. She goes and saves the last of the Resistance people, and Luke Skywalker decides that the Resistance is worth saving. He uses his new Force power where he transplants himself from one planet to a completely different planet as the Force goes, and he confronts Kylo Ren and tells him that he's made these decisions, and they have the only lightsaber fight that exists in which 2 lightsabers never actually touch. Kylo Ren realizes it's just a Force Ghost. This Force Ghost is actually a distraction, so the rest of the Resistance can escape this planet because Kylo Ren's too distracted by anger to try to kill Luke Skywalker because he wanted him to be gone so there were no more Jedi, that he would be the last Jedi, but actually there's a new Jedi, her name's Rey, and she's going to be the next Jedi. Rise of Skywalker, this is the last Star Wars movie. This is supposed to be the culmination of all Star Wars movies, and looking at the story. The opening crawl gives away one of the biggest plot points of the movie. The Emperor speaks. The Emperor Palpatine is back, and it's kind of confusing why he's back, but I kind of like how he's back because he is the big baddie. Turns out like he wasn't actually dead, and all these people that have been whispering to Kylo Ren all these years is actually the Emperor trying to manipulate the Skywalker because he's pissed about the Skywalker is pretty much taking him out, but he's hard to kill. So he's been using all these cloning technologies, just cloning like the prequels, to try to find a new body. He finds a new body. He's like, hey, guess what, Kylo Ren, you're now Supreme Leader Ren, and I've got all these Star Destroyers that can blow up all this stuff. They have like planet-destroying weapons on each individual ship. So now there's thousands of Death Stars instead of just one Death Star. So still the same concept, just thousands of them. It's just one. And so Rey is going around. She's like, I need to find this Sith Wayfinder, which is gonna help me find this planet that has all these secret ships with the Emperor because we know the Emperor's alive. And it turns out she keeps running into Kylo Ren. They have this thing called a diet in the Force where they keep seeing each other. They can see each other on different planets, even if they're not on the same planet. They fight each other at 2 different times, which is really cool. And she runs into him on another desert planet that is not Jakku, that is not Tatooine. How many desert planets are there in Star Wars? My God, where's the vegetation?
All of them.
So she gets in this fight with Kylo Ren. She ends up seeing sparks shoot from her hand, and she blows up a ship that she thinks is Chewbacca in it. It's just supposed to make us feel like Chewbacca's in it. Chewbacca's not actually anything. And I'm like, hold on, she's got Force lightning. That means she's bad. Turns out that Rey is actually a clone. She is the daughter of a clone that was one of Palpatine's survived hosts. So she's actually the granddaughter of Palpatine. So she is technically by blood an heir to Emperor Palpatine. So he wants her back so that he can use her to create this power that will bring him back to life. And he also needs Kylo Ren because he understands they're divided in the Force. So she fights Kylo Ren. Kylo Ren and her have this confrontation, and she ends up stabbing him, and he would probably die from the wound. And she uses Force power that she heals him right there, and she tells him that he can make different choices. He has this vision of his father. They have the same conversation of when he murdered his father, but it's in a completely different tone, where he realizes that his soul, his spirit had not been fractured, that he actually intended that he wanted to be good, and he's redeemed, and he comes back as Ben Solo. Rey realizes that it is her fate at this time after she confronts Luke Skywalker when she decides she wants to give up, and Luke Skywalker tells her that the destiny of the Jedi is to have these big fights, to make these tough decisions. So she goes and fights Emperor Palpatine because she believes this is her destiny. Kylo Ren decides, aka Ben Solo, comes out, he's gonna go help her. They go fight the Emperor. The Emperor's like, I'm glad you're both here. I need the diet of the Force to bring me back to life. And like, well, and this whole time there's like this giant space battle, but then like, we gotta destroy these ships. And you're like thinking everything is going, but like everything goes really bad. The Emperor's back. He uses Force lightning to like take out the power of all the fleet, and they think that there's only the small fleet that's gonna take out the Emperor. And it's like, what are we gonna do? And then Lando Calrissian's like, you have hope, and he brings like 4 jillion ships and all these ships, including the Ghost, which is from Star Wars Rebels, which is really cool. I love that the Ghost is in this scene. They fight, and they're like, oh, we're gonna like stop anyone. There's these horses on top of like a Star Destroyer, and that's really cool. And there's this weird British actor that's like now the head of the First Order that like doesn't make any sense. It's called the Last Order because now it's the First Order. These are like the last people that ever exist. And Rey calls on the spirit of all the Jedi, which is something she's been working on. She's trying to communicate with all the Jedi, and she uses 2 lightsabers that she's got, one from Ben Solo and one from herself, and she kills the Emperor once and for all. He explodes. Supposedly this time he's actually dead, where before when they did something similar to him, he wasn't dead. And she sees Ben Solo. She gives Ben a kiss, which people think is a romantic thing, but I think it's one of those things where it's a relief of this moment. They had this moment together, and he used the last of his energy to heal her, and he dies, and she moves on, and she is the last remaining individual that has Force sensitivity powers and able to train the next generation of Jedi. At the end of the movie, she buries Luke and Leia's lightsabers, as we found out Leia was also Force sensitive on Tatooine, where this all started, in the Shallow Grave and Tatooine, similar to Anakin Skywalker's mother, and all the family in this movie. And someone asked her who she is, and she says she's Rey Skywalker, because family is not necessarily a name that you have to bear because she's a Palpatine, but is a name that you can choose because you can choose what you want to be. We're all about our choices. That's the end of Star Wars Saga.
My gosh, that was in depth. You need to get a drink.
It's like, that was like 49.
Oh my gosh.
But like, I don't know how else to do it faster.
Yeah, it was like you were all the way through it. I cannot believe how much you hit. That is insane.
Oh my God. I have no piece of paper. I wrote nothing down. That's just like,
how in the world?
That's just spitting wisdom, I guess.
Oh my gosh.
So
okay, I'm gonna try. I guess I'll try to follow that. So typically, on our normal episodes, I would do the standings throughout baseball and review the 5, the 5 teams of the NL Central. I'm gonna do the same, but I'm gonna provide my top 5 Star Wars shows and movies. But we're gonna do shows first of all time, and I'll explain why. So. Number 5, we're gonna go in reverse order. The Bad Batch, solid series. Very well done. Like how it ended. I'm not going to give any spoilers away since it just released. But The Bad Batch, just a fantastic animated. And it is for adults as well. Don't judge me.
I don't. I used to judge people who watch the Star Wars cartoons.
No.
And then I started watching them myself, especially some of them. Like, some of these are excellent. These are really
so good.
Yeah.
Number 4, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Might have the best fight scene visually out of anything Star Wars. I mean, that ending scene with Darth Vader and Obi-Wan Kenobi and the lighting in it and just everything about it, the culmination of them seeing half of Anakin's face when Anakin's actually not there, it is so foreshadowing and just it's just a beautiful series. slow at the beginning. That's why I didn't get much more love above 4.
Anakin Skywalker is dead. I
Yeah.
am what remains.
Yes.
So good.
Oh, Hayden Christensen really,
Yes.
uh,
What a redemption
redeemed
song
herself.
for that guy.
Yeah, so good. Number 3, the Clone Wars animated series. My gosh, you want to talk about just perfect and wrapping me in. The red title episodes, those are bangers. Anything on Dathomir, awesome. Mortis, one of the best things Star Wars ever. It's the Clone Wars was great, and it made me appreciate the prequels even more after watching the Clone Wars, and it also made me change how I looked at some of the movies too. So because there was a lot of missed opportunity with the movies, especially after seeing the Clone Wars. So that hits number 3. Number 2, the Mandalorian. What can you say about the Mandalorian that hasn't already been said? It's nearly perfect in every way. You got Grogu, you got Mando, you have it's just fantastic. I mean, everything in it is nearly perfect. And speaking of nearly perfect, my number 1 on the list is Ahsoka.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pure cinema, perfect cinema. The best thing Star Wars has ever put out, in my opinion. If you like the Clone Wars, it ties in perfectly to that. And just it did everything so well. It gave me goosebumps. It made me feel things that I haven't felt before. It is just literally the perfect. It's the perfect show, and it's the best thing that they've ever done. So that is my top 5 for shows. Movies, this is where we're going to have a lot of disagreements likely, and a lot of you listening out there are going to shake your fists at me because you're not going to like what I have to say, but this is my opinion and my opinion alone. Number 5, Rise of Skywalker. Great conclusion. Ending scene was fantastic. I like bringing back Palpatine. I'm not going to get into all of it because Jeff did a great job of recapping that. This is the one that gets me a lot of hate. I like The Last Jedi. There, I said it. I like The Last Jedi. The rhetoric scene was good. It was really good. I liked Luke in this film a lot. I even like that. People thought it was stupid, but I loved it. And then finally, the thing that really put it over the top for me is, and this is what a lot of people actually hated, is Leia flying through space. I think it showed how powerful Leia actually was with the Force. I think it showed that she could have potentially been one of the most powerful Jedi, but she took a different path. And I was waiting after, looking at the comic books and reading up on Star Wars. We've always been waiting for that Leia backstory when she was learning the Force, and we got a little bit of that, and we got a little taste of what could have been if she had chose a different route. So that lands at number 4. Number 3, I loved Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. The final scene with Darth Vader was amazing. That alone to put it in the top 5. That alone, it puts it in the top 5. I mean, you see peak Vader at the end, but the storyline was great. It showed us a side of Star Wars that we haven't seen before up until that point. I enjoyed every minute of that movie, and then the ending just sealed it off for me. So that was great. Number 2, Empire Strikes Back. Classic, a complete movie. It brings a lot of things together. I remember seeing that for the first time. A lot of nostalgia for me. So that sits at number 2. And number 1, this is where it changed for me a lot. The Revenge of the Sith. Clone Wars made me appreciate this much more. Truly great movie this was. Obi-Wan and Anakin's fight scene at the end of the movie and the birth of Darth Vader, chef's kiss. It is such a well done movie, and that has recently taken over my top spot for movies. Any takeaways from that at all, Jeff?
No, I think everybody has a different flavor. I think as I've aged in a lot of my fandoms, like I have very little judgment for individuals and their choices on different things, and I also feel like that depending on the day, there are different Star Wars things that speak to me, and like things I really like to see. Like, is Phantom Menace a great movie? No, but like I'm excited to go see it with my kids at the theater
Heck
today.
yeah.
When you're listening to like the May the 4th, I'm gonna go see it May the 4th, and yeah, it's gonna be a fun time. It's a Star Wars movie. There's some really cool things to see, and seeing movies on the big screen for me is one of my favorite things to do. I love the movies, so
Yes.
that's yeah. I guess I'll kind of pivot away from the 5 TV shows and 5 movies and just do 5 Star Wars properties and that
Okay.
I like the most, and there'll be TV shows in there as well as movies. But I think number 5 for me is probably Andor. I think that is
Oh,
a
so good.
top tier Star Wars. It is a grounded Star Wars story that carries itself without Jedi, which I think is something that Star Wars has tried to do at different times and has really struggled to find an avenue. They have done such a good job with early parts of The Mandalorian and early stories in Book of Boba Fett and different parts of Star Wars Rogue One that, kind of leans away from just the Jedi stories. So nice
Yeah.
to see that project take off. Very excited to see where that goes, especially knowing that it's like going to eventually culminate into what Rogue One is, because that's the characters
Yeah.
involved. Is Cassian Andor from Rogue One. Number 4 for me, just thinking, off the hip, I'm going to probably put Clone Wars. I think that there is a majority of that show that I really, really enjoy. I think that there is a clear and tonal and decisive shift in it being a children's show to being a Star Wars show, and
Yeah.
it benefits greatly from that. And I think that once you power through some of the children's show elements, especially early Ahsoka, it really, really takes off. And I think Ahsoka is one of those characters in Star Wars, similar to how you say like some of these stories have elevated the property. She gets so much run, and obviously she has the Ahsoka show, and that is just a character for me. I have a my Mount Rushmore of Star Wars characters is technically 5 characters, but like one of them I consider like a pair very exclusively is Obi-Wan Kenobi, Ahsoka, then Kylo Ren Rey. I think that interaction is some of the best Star Wars that exists, which is why I hold the sequel trilogy very, very highly, which I know is not amongst big Star Wars folks something that is really, really appreciated. But to me, those movies are the closest I'll ever get to seeing the movies in 1977, and just how they were received, how they were
Hmm.
produced, how they were designed. Like the prequel trilogy is just trying to take new age technology, and the sequel trilogies had so much care that just seemed to be lost in the prequel trilogy in their design. And like I just fell in love with the characters, especially Ray, Daisy Ridley's performance, and Adam Driver from the Midwest, Mishawaka, Indiana, actually, which is where I have some family and some people I know who went to school with him. Out in Mishawaka, went to Mishawaka High School with Adam Driver. Play just absolutely kills it as Kylo Ren. Just such an amazing character. Love it. And then below that for me is where I would say my number 3, which is another show, is Rebels. I love
I like
um,
Rebels.
I like was so hesitant to watch that show. And I have no idea why. For years I was hesitant to watch, and I watched it this past year, and
Same.
it might be my favorite Star Wars thing. Very close to obviously number 3 in this league. Kanan Jarrus is my the end of my Mount Rushmore. Such a cool story. A Jedi that struggled post Order 66, that trained Ezra Bridger, who has become such a big part of his Star Wars story in the show Ahsoka. So that is probably my number 3, a show that I've now watched all the way through twice because I watched it myself and then I watched it with because I wanted to see if my son Kyle could watch it, and then we watched the entire thing together. And it was better the second time. Just a lot of story that like elevates some of the other stories. It's
Hmm.
great.
It
It's
does.
it's such a good show, and the characters, the voice acting in it, is actually, and this is not a ding, is one of the reasons that I had a hard time enjoying Ahsoka, because the characters are so well done in Rebels. Their live action counterparts in some ways aren't as good as the voice actresses.
Interesting.
Specifically, I love the voice actress they used for Hera in the cartoon, and loved the way that Sabine was portrayed in the cartoon. Did not enjoy either one of their real life as much. I am not saying they're bad. It just, I had so much affinity to Rebels by the time I watched Ahsoka, that like that really stuck out to me. But like Ahsoka's a Mount Rushmore Star Wars character for me, so that is a show that I hold in very high regard, but not as high as number two for me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. I know like it was not received well, but last year for Halloween, my daughter and I were Obi-Wan and young Leia. And like I have some just amazing pictures. My daughter looks exactly like that actress. And
Wow.
I have the Lola droid behind me. I love the design. I love the storytelling. I love the idea of Obi-Wan being this scared, shut off person. I thought that it was going to go another direction story wise, like after hearing for years that this thing was going to happen, and that it was going to be some sort of like spiritual show about how he connected to the Force Ghosts, like learning through Qui-Gon. And I feel like there's still a door open for another season, but like there's
Yeah.
like a debate on whether or not, I know it's been sold as a physical edition recently where it says the complete series of Obi-Wan. And yeah, the last few episodes are just absolutely incredible, and really just adds such an emotional depth to some of the actions in the original Star Wars movie, A New Hope, that there's this secret connection between Ben Kenobi and Princess Leia
Yep.
that we're completely unaware of, that like works for me so well. And Ewan McGregor, so like there are certain actors and actresses in Star Wars that like just embody the character forever. And say what you will about the prequel movies, Obi-Wan Kenobi will forever be Ewan McGregor for me. Just
Yes.
love, absolutely adore every moment we get of that man as Obi-Wan Kenobi, and starting to adore every moment we get of Hayden Christensen as Anakin and Darth
Yep.
Vader. And that's it. And my number one is, my favorite Star Wars movie to watch right now is Rise of Skywalker, and I know I get a lot of flack from folks for that. I think it gives me everything I want. I'm not saying it's a perfect film, but like when I want to watch a Star Wars movie on Star Wars Day, the last three Star Wars days, I have watched Rise of Skywalker. I love
Sure.
watching that movie. It's super fun. There's some amazing set pieces, as two of my favorite Star Wars characters in it. It's got Rey and Kylo Ren. There's a chase scene. There's lightsaber fights. There's some really interesting planets. There's some backstory that's really cool. We get the newest sagas, like big characters, the whole movie. We get Finn and Poe Dameron and all them interacting. We get a lot of interesting concepts.
Finn only had like 7 lines in it, and all of them were Rey.
Yeah, pretty much. And like, I love them establishing this idea of like other defected stormtroopers. Like, I think there's like a longer version of that movie that potentially exists that has all these ideas. I was all aboard the Wayfinder.
Yeah.
Like I know a lot of people are annoyed by like the Emperor coming back, but like if you buy into the concept, it's a great movie. It's super fun. It's a fun watch. That's my number one Star Wars movie Star Wars property right now. I will likely watch it after seeing Phantom Menace in the theater tomorrow night when my kids go to sleep. I'll probably turn that on as I go to bed on Star Wars Day.
Sure.
Like I have the last 3-4 Star Wars days. I just love watching that movie.
All right. Yeah, I appreciate that. I think I can't disagree with any of those. Obviously, Rebels is something that it just fell out of my top 5, and then the same thing with Andor. I really enjoyed that. So, yeah. With that said, let's have some fun with current Cubs players and staff that is most like Star Wars characters. Let's take 3 players and link them to a Star Wars character and explain why. I'll go ahead and go first. Tom Ricketts.
Hmm.
Tom Ricketts, I'm going to go ahead and say he's Darth Sidious. He has all the resources in the world and is very powerful, runs a very organized team, and only spins where he needs to. He is the Senate, and he answers to no one. So that's my first. My second one is Dansby Swanson. He is Luke Skywalker from the original 3 films.
A+.
He's his signings signaled a new hope for the Cubs. He's a leader, the chosen one for the Jedi, and he has beautiful flowing locks. And then my last one's Jan Gomes. He's old Obi-Wan Kenobi, oldest Jedi on the team, mentor to all Cubs, everyone on the Cubs roster, much like Obi-Wan. And after this season, just like Obi-Wan, he might disappear, just fade out of his baseball clothes and pass the baton on to a younger Jedi. So yeah, those are my 3. What about you?
I'm going to go with the chosen one concept, and not necessarily say he embodies all the spirit of Anakin Skywalker, but I'm going to go with the chosen one, Theo Epstein, because of him bringing the World Series to Chicago, and this idea that we waited, just like in the prophecy saying that we were waiting for one individual to bring balance to the force, we were waiting for one person to bring a championship to Chicago. I knew the second they hired him, it was going to be him. I swear to God, I will die in that. That was the day.
I love it. That's such a good pick.
That was the year I bought season tickets because I knew it was turning. It was the moment that I dialed in from my 11 fandom, this is Spinal Tap reference, to like a 17. Like I just really just amplified and went full minors analysis and just like every aspect of the team. Like this guy was a legend. He was the prophecy fulfilled. So not Anakin Skywalker, but the concept of the chosen one prophecy from Star Wars.
Yeah,
So
okay.
a little bit of a dodge. The next one I'm going to go with Laura Ricketts as Ahsoka Tano. She is not necessarily viewed as being a traditional Jedi in a long structure of traditional Jedis, with her master technically being Anakin Skywalker, who turns to Darth Vader. Laura Ricketts does a ton of charity work and a ton of activism work in Chicago, which feels a little adjacent to how people feel about the rest of the Ricketts clan. This is actually no dig at Tom. Tom seems to be, in like very active in these things, but like she gets to be able to be the face of a different type of Jedi Order, much like Ahsoka Tano is not a traditional Jedi, but is a practicing Jedi in some capacity. So I'm going Ahsoka Tano with Laura Ricketts, which neither one of these are players, but they are Cubs adjacent people.
Yeah, that's fine.
I think I'm going to go with a past player here, and I'm going to go with Sammy Sosa as Kylo Ren. And I think like the whole arc of him starting as a solo, as a child of a Skywalker, like a Han Solo and Princess Leia in 1998, Sammy Sosa was this great thing for the Chicago Cubs. And then the steroid era and all those things, just kind of the corked bat, some of his commentary, the stories about how he was with the media and his issues with like not constantly being heard or seen or appreciated like he thought he should be appreciated, and his slow slip into the dark side. And when the Ricketts family bought the team, whatever discussions that have happened about bringing Sammy Sosa back and his comments and lack of ability to admit that there was any wrongdoing, he slowly slipped into the Kylo Ren personality, but now he's kind of back on the scene, trying to get redemption, trying to work his way back to Ben Solo. But has the damage been done? Are we a Ray kiss away from Sammy Sosa being back at Wrigley Field? I'm not sure. I will have to see. But those are my 3 Star Wars Cub comparisons.
I like them all, and I love how you came up with those on the fly.
Yeah, I did no preparation for this episode. I'm embarrassed.
Before we hit closing, I'm going to give you a couple of options here, Jeff. I'm going to let you go on this one. Okay, you can either pick what ML team is most like a group or entity in Star Wars, or you can pick a current or former MLB player and what Star Wars character do they remind you of the most? You get a pick. Which one you want to do?
I'm going to go with entity, and it might not be the current answer that I think a lot of people, but I'm gonna go with the Yankees of my childhood and the Empire. Like
Oh,
they've been
nice.
always known as the evil Empire. That's been something that's been synonymous with the Yankees since I feel like I followed baseball.
Yeah.
They had more money, they had the ability to build this super team, this superpower, this Death Star of a lineup, this great rotation, and just was able to outspend, do things that you didn't think were possible. And they were just, you didn't root for them. They were the root evil of all evils. But,
Yes.
and it doesn't, it's weird because, like, I think they've, like, been stripped of that. And I
Yes.
think, like, the Dodgers are, like, more perceived as that. But,
That's
like,
who I would go with. Yeah.
I would never necessarily like tag them to the evil. I don't know why like the Steinbrenners. I don't know if it's a New York thing. Like if like I just can't associate like pure evil from L.A. But like New York, I'm like yeah, that's evil. Like that's
Yeah.
maybe it's just like my as a Cub fan growing up, like just hating the Mets. Like having no association to the 69 team, but hearing so many stories about the
Yeah.
69 Mets, and then like 2015 like Jim just like absolutely taking a dump on my heart, like it's like not knowing that 2016 would be such a quick turnaround and fearing that Mets rotation in 2015 and being like god how many years are we gonna face this, and we like they have the
Yep.
exact arsenal that can just absolutely destroy this lineup, and then health for every one of them ever since has been a huge problem. And that this
I
like
like it.
in some ways stinks like as a Mets fan, and it stinks like to watch your team, but I god the narrative in 2015 of like this will be the NLCS for 7 years is like what
Yeah.
and I was like
Yep.
yeah it will be. All these guys are so young, and like it's not like in all honesty in hindsight it's not like either one of them, if you were a Mets fan would you take the Cubs one World Series and like this weird like mediocrity or whatever you want to like not able to spend and like may supplement the issues
Yeah. I
of the
don't
team
know.
or these guys, or would you take the injuries and have it fall apart quicker like that? I don't know. I think I mean it's a little different because the Cubs have waited so long for a World Series. Like I take the World Series 100 times out of 100, but
Yeah.
like neither one of those stories really ends truly well. Like
No.
that's none of those guys in that group.
Like Hans,
Like
like the Solo movie. It just did not end well.
yeah, and like it was hard to justify whether or not it was worth existing.
Yeah.
Oh man, how about you? Do you have one more Star Wars related quip?
Yeah, I'll take a former MLB player, and Ricky Henderson is Han Solo, 100%. And the reason why I say that is there are so many stories about Ricky Henderson and his ginormous ego of a head. He would be the type of player that you'd be like, Ricky, you are really good at baseball, and he'd be like, I know. I mean, he's he got voted the most cockiest player. I think he was like top 15 cockiest baseball players of all time. I think he was number one because of just how much he pumped his ego. And so, I look at it like a Han Solo. Han Solo was really good at what he did, but sometimes he's probably a little too, a little too cocky and everything. So that's the two that I feel like are most comparable is Ricky and Han.
I've got one good one that I'll I can't like I just thought of it. Yogi Berra and Yoda.
Oh,
Just like two guys that like
oh,
just spit like absolute gibberish that has become like such common phraseology of that restaurant's busy, nobody goes there. Yogi Berra, a classic line. He has
yeah,
so many lines like that, and do or do not, there is no try. And them absolutely calling out how little that makes sense in Rebels is one of my
I
favorite
know.
moments. It's like, how does that make any sense? And
It doesn't.
Kanan Jarrus is like, I don't know. It's like, oh, good. It wasn't just me.
Oh gosh.
Excuse me. Well, I think, that was a long, long time in a galaxy far, far away for all
Yeah, it
our
was.
listeners. And thank you for joining us for this very special episode of Bricks Behind the Ivy. Generally a Cub podcast for Cub fans by Cub fans. But today, on May the 4th, we wish you the May the 4th be with you. If you are looking for any Cubs merchandise that might have a Star Wars flair, maybe check out Wrigleyville Sports, one of our sponsors for the show. If you use the links in our description and use the code BRICKS10, you can find some Cub stuff, maybe some Cub Star Wars adjacent stuff. I honestly haven't looked at this point. And if not, buy that Cub stuff, get that 10% off, and support your favorite Cubs podcast and now favorite Star Wars adjacent podcast just maybe once a year. Sean, do you want to just say any good Star Wars thoughts to people on May the 4th?
To Bricks Behind the Ivy, you must subscribe. Watch, you must. Me at HOTSTOVECUBBIES on all social media platforms. Follow. To Northside Baseball. For all your Cubs news and articles, you must go.
This is the podcast you're looking for.
Yeah, this is the podcast you're looking for. And I just want to close out by saying, in the famous words of Jabba the Hutt, Misa Paka Jobo Nuku.
Come again?
Misa Paka Jobo Nuku.
Which translates to, this is the best podcast in the world. I'm so glad I started listening. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you guys for a regular episode next week, plus another bonus episode on the off day in which Chris Mills from Mills Gaming will be joining me for a review we did a few weeks ago now on MLB The Show. So check out these little bonus episodes we have in between our regular episode. Tell us what you think. Tell us if you want more. Tell us if you want less. But please check it out. Chris is a great guy. He's been in the sports gaming community for a very long time. Very, very good source. He plays MLB The Show on his Twitch channel quite regularly, along with a lot of other sports titles, and has been able to give feedback to companies like San Diego Studios and EA Sports on different sports titles and his opinions, and that to me is super cool. So really cool conversation we have on MLB The Show, and we talk about, he's an Orioles fan, I'm a Cubs fan, specific parts of the game we like, and then how the game is tiered and catered towards Cubs fans, and giving us a perspective of how the game he feels is catered to Baltimore Orioles fans. So kind of cool to kind of get some perspective on the work that goes into making each component of each team feel special for the fan bases involved. So we'll see you guys next week for a regular episode and another bonus episode. May the 4th be with you.
May the 4th be with you.